Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. And there's one thing that seems to keep showing up over and over again lately, and I decided that I wanted to take the time to make some content that draws attention to it. This is something that, to be perfectly honest, and to be a little bit blunt, seems to be a bit of an epidemic in society on the whole. Whether we're talking about the weekly groups that I facilitate, the one-on-one work that I do, or just my own personal experiences as I wander around in the world, people either seem to exhibit a general sense of, or they're having a serious reaction that's pushing back against the display of entitlement. So let's talk about it. From a therapeutic, coaching or counselling perspective, entitlement is one of the maladaptive early childhood schemas that we can recognise within our personality system. As we take the necessary time to define what we mean by our stories of entitlement, we're looking at a narrative that revolves around a theme of doing what we want, when we want, without thought for the impact these actions might have on other people. This can show up in many different ways, some of which might not be easy to recognise and some of which are pretty freaking blatant. There are examples of these behaviours all over the place. People parking their car wherever they want to, driving around however they want to, saying whatever it is that they want to say, and just generally doing whatever it is that they want to do without thought for the impact of these actions. The other day, when I was driving my kids to school, waiting patiently at a traffic light, as the signal turned to green, a young woman just decided to wander across the road, chatting away on her phone, holding up all the traffic and laughing away to herself while she was doing it. Now, obviously, I definitely don't know for a fact what was happening for this young woman in this particular situation, but it seemed to me at the time that this was an example of blatant entitled behaviour. When entitlement is a story that's present in our system, we either deliberately, or maybe just genetically, have absolutely no empathy and therefore no understanding for the way the things we do, the words we say, and the actions that we take affect the people around us. This can be because we simply don't give a shit how we impact other people, or because we're wandering around in a little world of our own, completely unaware of what's happening all around us. And for some reason, one that I'm still actually trying to figure out, this seems to be a way of being that's getting more and more common as time goes by. Just to be clear, this is not simply my own observation. As always, when I notice a particular story that's gathering momentum within my personality, I take the time to look at it to see if I've got a filter that's engaged, which only allows me to see things from a particular point of view. But when I did take the time to do this type of work, I found that this definitely wasn't the case. Many of the people I encounter, those I come across in group and those I engage with in my own personal life, seem to have a very similar story whenever this topic comes up. I know and chat with a lot of different people who spend a considerable amount of time in the worlds of education at many different levels, people who work in the areas of finance, law, general sales, and many other business professionals that all recognise and acknowledge that this truly is a social epidemic. So what is it that's going on, and why is there so much of this shit going around in the world these days? Because to be brutally honest with you, it's beginning to look like it's activating a bit of a pushback from a hell of a lot of people in the world. There are those that blame the younger generation for this behaviour pattern gathering momentum, and at the risk of having that wonderful label thrown in my direction whenever somebody my age tries to point something out like this, it does seem to be something that's rampant at a younger age than it is with the old farts like me.
Uh-oh. Your powers are weak, old man.
That doesn't mean it doesn't exist in older people, though, because it absolutely does. But many of the people that have talked about this with me seem to think it's tied to a generational thing. If this is the case, and I'm not saying that it is, I actually think it isn't the fault of the current younger generation. For decades, we've been sending out a message that our emotions are something we need to accept, understand, and actually experience. Teaching those that will listen that we need to develop our capacity to express our feelings when appropriate to do so in healthy and adaptive ways. But it seems like this message has been warped into a point of view that's looking at certain emotions as being bad or wrong, things that we need to get rid of. It also seems that we're spending our time validating the behaviours that are connected to emotions in general. These behaviours often don't line up with the really important concepts of living a values-based life. Dialectical behaviour therapy is built on the premise of always validating our emotions, but not necessarily validating the behaviours that go with them. And it's definitely true that each of our emotional experiences are necessary and important aspects of our personality system. While some of us have bigger emotional reactions than others, each of these experiences serves a particular purpose. They send a message to us that there's something we need to address. They activate a behavioural response, and they send a signal out to the world around us that we're going through something. This is true even for extremely important emotions like guilt and shame. And one of the more common narratives that has been pushed around in society for a while now, particularly when it comes to our uncomfortable emotional experiences, is the concept of something called toxic shame. I even did a video on it myself. But while toxic shame is something we do need to understand, it doesn't mean that the emotion of shame is an experience that we have to get rid of. Basically, guilt and shame are in our system to draw attention to when we're doing things or being a person that's compromising our own core values and beliefs, or the values and beliefs of the society we live in. Toxic shame is when these emotions are not based in actuality. They're based in a mostly fictional story. But if I'm actually doing something that's compromising these values, something that's impacting other people in the way that highlights a breakdown in my beliefs about honesty, integrity, safety, loyalty, and respect, then these uncomfortable emotional experiences are actually justified, and I need to pay attention to them. But if we no longer connect with these emotions in a healthy way, because we've been told that guilt and shame are toxic and not necessarily things for us to deal with, would this be why there's an epidemic of entitlement playing out in society these days? And I don't know if the answer to this question is yes, but I do know it has a high level of probability. One way that we can recognise the prospect of these emotions being present within our personality system is through the activation of an angry response. If someone happens to point out how our actions are impacting them, in essence asking us to respect their healthy boundaries, an angry response can get activated within our personality. And unless I'm a person who genuinely doesn't feel these emotions at my core, which is always a possibility, anger is often the coping mechanism for the presence of guilt and shame. This activation of anger, whether it's expressed or suppressed, can be the very essence of entitlement for many, many people. How dare you tell me what to do? Don't you know who I think I am? Was a subconscious narrative that I walked around with for a significant period of time. When I actually sat with this, I found that it was tied to an entitled child that was dominant within my personality, particularly when I was faced with certain old childhood stories. How we deal with these behaviours really comes down to personal accountability, understanding what it means to live a values-based life, recognizing if the sense of entitlement and the actions we take as a result are actually impacting the people around us, and if they are, being willing to sit with and not use behaviours connected to secondary emotions like anger to avoid the uncomfortable feelings that go with this realisation. One thing that is for sure is that this general sense of entitlement seems to be getting bigger and bigger in society all the time, and it's coming at us from all angles, not just the obvious ones that are out there for everyone to see. There's a serious lack of accountability for the role we play in our daily situations, a tendency to blame others for the way things happen and the way they make us feel, a lack of empathy, compassion, and understanding for why other people might do what they do, what someone else's point of view is, especially if it's one that's different to our own. We don't connect with the emotional experiences that might be behind someone else's behaviours because it's all about me and what I want to do and what I need for myself right now. When entitlement is a dominant story within our personality, we only see things one way. There's no willingness to compromise or negotiate at all, and we're rigidly attached to our own stories and beliefs. When I personally notice I have a sense of entitlement within my system, I recognise that I'm pretty egocentric, almost childlike in my perspective, and I lack the emotional maturity to get out of this state of mind. I believe that the world needs to see things from my point of view, regardless of the impact this will have on other people. This is definitely not effective for me to live the life I want to live and be the person I want to be. And listen, I do not want to come off like I'm preaching in any way, standing up on some kind of soapbox to be above other people, because that's definitely not the case, and believe me when I say it's not my intent with the making of this video. But I truly believe if we don't get a handle on this level of entitlement in society, and do this pretty soon, there could be an absolute shit show that's waiting for us all just around the corner. From my point of view, the only way to work with this sense of entitlement is to connect with the values that made us strong as a society to begin with. Values that are sometimes lost in the way the world is these days. Being honest, having integrity, being loyal to those we care about, creating safety in our environments and inside of our relationships, allowing other people to speak, to be heard and understood, and above all else, treating other people with the respect and compassion that we want and usually expect for ourselves. Because healthy relationships are reciprocating relationships, which is something I truly believe is important for us to rekindle within society these days. All of the skills we need for living a values-based life are available to us when we live a lifestyle that's grounded in the skills of DBT. So take a look around my website if you want to know more. And also, I'd love to know what you think about this. Am I just making this all up? Am I seeing things that aren't there? I'm completely open to acknowledging this if it's actually not a fact. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel and throw a like on this video, as it helps to get the word out there about the benefits of living a DBT lifestyle. Don't forget to come join the live conversation in our free weekly groups. I'll leave a link to the page containing more information about this in the description below. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you again soon. Take care, be safe, and be well.